Drug trafficking business is the stock in trade for many cartels in Mexico. The market seems to be very rich and fertile, and that's why the number of drug lords and cartels is on the rise every day. Unfortunately, drug trafficking isn't like every other business because it involves the use of violence, gang wars, and loss of lives. The Mexican government is doing everything it takes to eliminate these cartels, and while most of the time it seems like they are one step behind, they do manage to land a few good hits. In today's video, we will be taking a look at the Jalisco New Generation Cartel and the recent encounter with government officials that has cost them so much. CJNG's history can be traced back to the Millennial Cartel, at a time when the cartel's leaders had either been arrested or killed. As a result of the instability, the cartel broke into different factions, and the Jalisco New Generation Cartel was the most notable among said factions. Their leader, Nemesio o Seguros Cervantes, popularly known as El Mencho, had worked closely with the leaders of the Millennial Cartel, so he had a good understanding of the ropes and how everything worked. From its inception in 2010, CJNG has never been shy to use violence. In the first few months of its creation, the cartel started to take down most of the cartels in the Jalisco region, where their business is based. They started a heated war against La Resistencia, another breakout faction from the Millennial Cartel, and Los Zetas for control of the region. The war was bloody. The CJNG started building a brutal reputation by kidnapping and murdering members of rival cartels. They would make videos of people they kidnapped and make them confess their crimes before they were killed. CJNG posted these videos on social media and claimed responsibility for the murders. What no one knew was that they were just getting started and that the extent of their killings would multiply faster than anyone could have imagined. In October 2011, the state of Veracruz had a taste of CJNG's wrath. The authorities started finding heaps of dead bodies in different parts of the country. 36 bodies were first found in different houses, and then another 20 were found in a different neighborhood. The bodies just kept turning up in different places to the point that, by the end of October, the state of Veracruz had seen 100 bodies. The Mexican government started an operation led by the military as a response to the Veracruz killings called Operation Save Veracruz. Sadly, this only seemed to fuel the war because the bodies kept turning up. Public buses were being burnt down, and there were street shootouts between rival cartels, leaving a trail of bodies behind. It didn't take much time for the government to be caught in the crossfire. In 2015, 15 police officers were killed, while 5 others were injured by the CJNG. The CJNG had set an ambush along a mountain road in Jalisco. As soon as the police vehicles stopped, CJNG gunmen opened fire on them. It was almost impossible for the officers to retaliate because the attack had been properly planned in a way that ensured the police officers were in a vulnerable area. CJNG's use of violence is unmatched in the whole of Mexico. To date, they always make sure to make videos of their victims to be uploaded to social media. While other cartels would rather find a way to hide the bodies of their victims, the CJNG would prefer to hang dead bodies over bridges to ensure that everyone is aware of their brutality. Like every other cartel, CJNG's major stream of income is the trafficking of cocaine and methamphetamine, but they're also into racketeering and oil theft. The one thing that stands out about this criminal organization is the speed with which they took over their region. Their brutality and use of violence gave them an edge. They killed off rival cartel members and instilled fear in the hearts of many in such a way that their business grew dramatically with minimal opposition. In 2020, the criminal group was estimated to be worth over $20 billion. Since then, they've grown their business well and expanded considerably. The Jalisco Cartel is famous for the sale of methamphetamine in the US. They also have drug markets in Europe, Asia, and beyond. But when it comes to drug trafficking, they come second place to the Sinaloa Cartel. Despite being relatively new, the CJNG is currently the strongest and most aggressive rival of the Sinaloa Cartel. Not so long ago, Mexico's Financial Intelligence Unit alongside the DEA carried out an operation that involved locating the financial operators and companies that helped cartels launder their money. In June 2020, they found and froze 1,770 bank accounts, 16 companies, and 2 trust funds that were linked to CJNG. When the numbers were tallied, the total amount of assets that were frozen from the CJNG was $1.1 billion. Having a leader like Nemesio Osegura Cervantes, aka El Mencho, is already a strong enough reputation. El Mencho is one of the most wanted drug lords, so much so that there is a $10 million bounty on his head. He's often compared to the devil for the kinds of crime he has instructed people to carry out. El Mencho is a very strategic and calculated man. It is this leadership trait that has enabled CJNG to violently rise far higher than many cartels in Mexico. The cartel has different arms that take up specific kinds of warfare. This, in turn, makes them a formidable force. El Mencho is a former policeman. He understands the importance of preparedness and safety, so he takes training cartel members to a higher level. They even have a professional training regime for their hit squad to make sure they always get the job done efficiently. The CJNG has killed people in uncountable quantities to the point that the citizens of Mexico are scared stiff of them. Aside from hanging dead bodies from bridges, CJNG is known for torturing their victims without mercy, cutting victims' bodies into bits and pieces, and scattering them along public streets. There are also rumors that the CJNG engage in cannibalism during initiation of new members. If this is true, then the CJNG are on an entirely different level of inhumane wickedness. The Mexican government has also had its share of the CJNG's violence. The CJNG is responsible for the deaths of many government officials. They also used a rocket-propelled grenade to bring down an army helicopter from the sky. The number of police officers that have lost their lives during street shootings is not something to be spoken about. CJNG has been a huge threat to politicians in Mexico. They've reportedly been involved in the deaths of 130 political candidates. They are responsible for the assassination of so many government officials, including the former governor of Jalisco, Aristotle Sandoval. Between 2018 and 2020, CJNG carried out nearly 300 acts of gang-related violence. This record is by far higher than that of any other cartel in a space of 2 years. In 2020, U.S. counter-drug officials referred to CJNG as its biggest criminal drug threat. Mexico's former security commissioner thinks the CJNG is, quote, the most urgent threat to Mexico's national security. The most technologically advanced, sophisticated, heavily armed, dangerous, and feared criminal organization in the world, and Mexico's most dangerous criminal organization. The Mexican government has waged a series of wars against cartels and drug trafficking. They have put in time, money, and different strategies to try and curb drug trafficking and its effects on the people. But the harder the government fights, the harder the cartels fight back. No matter how many lives they lose, these cartels always go back, regroup, and strengthen their forces to fight back. Sometimes cartel members who have been apprehended agree to become informants for the government in order to get reduced sentences. The government then uses the information gotten from these people to take down different cartels, or at least to try to. The only problem is that the more the government takes down cartels, the more cartels are formed, either as breakouts from older cartels or as entirely new organizations. This singular fact has made it almost impossible for the government to totally eradicate cartels in Mexico. With their reputation, it is not shocking that the government has found it extremely difficult to put CJNG in check. Many small communities in Mexico now prefer vigilantes as a means of protection from these cartels. The government has asked these vigilante groups to step down and allow them to handle the cartels, but the people would rather be protected by vigilantes. The CJNG has faced a few hits from the government that have at one point or another tried to shake the organization, but their system has proved to be strong enough to stand through these hits. In 2019, a CJNG member, Adrian Alonso Guerrero, popularly known as El Ocho or El M, was arrested. He was the head of operations in the Ciénaga and northern Los Altos regions of Jalisco and is also the godson of CJNG's leader El Mencho. Following his arrest, Adrian Alonso Guerrero was charged with drug trafficking and kidnapping. In 2020, DEA officers made the largest ever arrest of CJNG members. The operation that led to this arrest is known as Operation Python, which led to the arrest of about 750 cartel members in the United States. The authorities also seized about 1.5 tons of drugs from them. In July 2020, the authorities stated that they had arrested CJNG's famous hitman, Jaime Tafoya Ortega, aka El Alacrán, or the Scorpion. The Mexican Attorney General's office released a statement saying Tafoya is the prime suspect for the assassination of Judge Uriel Villegas Ortiz and his wife. Tafoya is suspected to be behind the abduction and murder of Colima State Representative Anel Bueno Sanchez, whose body was discovered in a secret grave. Rosalindo Gonzalez Valencia was arrested for the second time in November 2021 in Zapopan, Jalisco. The Mexican Ministry of Defense stated that her arrest was a significant blow to the financial structure of organized crime in the state. Valencia played an important role in the illicit financial operations of the cartel. El Mencho's brother, Antonio Segura, aka El Tony Montana, was arrested in December 2022. He was moving weapons in a suburb of Guadalajara. He was said to be an overseer of violence and logistics. He was also in charge of weapon purchases and money laundering for the cartel. In November 2022, the Mexican army arrested 16 hitmen that are allegedly members of CJNG. In the area where the arrest occurred, residents heard gunshots exchanged between the army and the men. Videos posted to social media show National Guard armored cars in the vicinity. It is believed that the National Army found out the headquarters of the criminal organization and besieged it before people in the compound could realize it. They were obviously overpowered, but wouldn't go down without a fight. After the arrests, the army searched the compound and found weapons, magazines, and cartridges, which were all seized. There are rumors that the arrested hitmen are members of CJNG, but there has been no official confirmation from the government. El Mencho and his crime group have proved to be strong and resilient, but the government seems to be closing in on them. How long can the CJNG withstand capture? We hope that Mexico is soon rid of this devilish crime group so that the people could have some breathing space. That's all we have for today. Don't forget to watch our other videos on the channel.